We are here today with the great Tim Lefebvre, session and touring bassist with artists such as David Bowie, Tedeschi, Trucks, Knower, Donnie McCaslin, so many more. We're going to talk to him about his career sound approach, how he straddles that line between supportive bass playing and stepping out, gear, playing with a pick, all of it. And we have a few incredibly cool videos to watch with Tim, and hopefully, Tim, you'll give us a little bit of insight to what makes you so monstrous. So thank you so much for being with us today. You ready to dive in? Okay, Sharon, hang on a minute. So it's so incredibly funky, pocketed, but like P-bass gonk. Did you record it? You said before this that you recorded it on that 68. Is that right?
That's right. And back then I was living in Santa Monica and I had a Neve 3104 mic pre. I just kind of went straight in without the EQ because every time the EQ button kept breaking. So like I was just flat in. It was just straight up Neve. Old Neve and this bass. And then, you know, obviously, I mean, here's the other thing, like the secret about that song, he didn't have it all written then. So like, I only play the verses, so the rest of it's like all programmed.
Oh,
so,
wild.
Yeah, so, and I don't even know what, you know, I think you can tell it's like, and the choruses, you know, we've played it live, obviously, since then, but I mean, even though I'm technically not really in the band, but that line was just like, that's kind of the only thing he had written. And he was just like, yeah, just play. Every time I record with Lewis, it's just, he wants you to play a billion notes. and luckily, well, yeah. And, you know, back in the old days, though, it was like impossibly fast tempos to especially to make it swing a little bit. So like, but this one was like, right. It was completely like grid 16th. So like, you know,
it's like so dead center. Even.
He might have edited me. I don't know. But I think you know, I think he picked the best stuff, like, because I just was in loop record, just going. But those are the basic lines he told me to play, and then, you know, I don't know how it wound up there, but I was just like, even when I heard it back, I was like, whoa, you know, pretty tight sounding.
It's so gnarly.
Yeah.
Do you remember the line? Can you show it to us?
Yeah, I think it's derivations of this, but it's like, you know. You know, you just fill the fourth line, you fill the fourth bar.
Right.
But yeah, it's you know, I mean, maybe I should switch it to the other side. This is like as a flat DI.
That sounds a little more like it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
because it gets the snap out there. Also, like I brutalize the strings, you know. It's like that old 70s, you know. Bernard Edwards and those guys would brutalize the bass.
Yes,
Lewis Johnson
so hard.
Yeah, even you know when Lewis Johnson playing fingers, it's just he's beating it up.
Right.
So not that I'm in any of the same universe as them, but that it's influential. You know, Verdine White too, right? So that's what I thought of. But yeah, it's just kind of a cool. I mean, obviously Lewis gave me direction towards what that, but then he just picked the coolest stuff. So
yeah. Well, and you mentioned before this that everybody plays it wrong, that like you've not seen anyone do it right on the internet.
I've seen a couple, like very few, but because I think they get caught up in like, it's really kind of easy. It's like in, you know, don't. So that's the key. So that's all it is. And that's the thing. And it's also really short. Some people like, which is totally wrong. It's all short.
Right.
Note length is everything. You know, and then you sort of just do varieties from there, but I don't even know if that was in time or not, by the way.
Oh, it was incredibly in time. I heard the foot going and everything. I mean, dude, and okay, so you recorded it on this bass.
Yeah.
Always flats on this bass?
Yeah, I mean, I got this bass from my friends Sue Sidzina and Mike McAllister from Indianapolis. They shipped it to Seattle. I gave them half the money. They shipped it to Seattle. I played it on a couple of Tedeschi Trucks gigs, and then you know, then I decided to keep it, so I sent them the rest of that second half of the money. And I put these DRs on it, just for some reason. I was with DR then, so I put these DRs on it, and they're still on it. you know, and also, you know, it's one of these things where, you know, flat ones, like you pull it off the rack, you haven't played it in a year, it's still in tune. It's wild.
Yes, they're so stable. Yeah,
it's crazy. But this, this bass is like every note's a punch in the face. It's unbelievable.
Yes. And
So-
how old are the flats?
Since
I maybe
like
could do the math, but
2013.
yeah.
Perfect
cool. So
age, you know,
10
like they're not,
years, 11 years old.
yeah, exactly. They're perfectly dead, still have life to them though, which is cool.
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah.
bass sounds awesome. And so, you know, you're playing that thing and you're tapping your foot and you're like, I wonder if it's in time. Of course, it's crazy in time. And that figure you're playing to is so much, like you mentioned, note length, but it's also about evenness and syncopation.
Right.
Like that thing is so locked in. Is there anything that you've done over the years to work on that thing, whether it be metronome, drum grooves? Like right now it comes incredibly natural to you, but did it always?
I mean, you know, a lot of it came from playing with Wayne Krantz Trio because it was super grid all the time. Like, so it was Keith Carlock and Wayne Krantz. And like, so
Yes.
we did, and also it was playing in a ton and with 8-bar phrases. So like, you know, you could play, it's kind of interesting because there was so much room to improvise in that band. Like, and it was always in a key and it was always with the 8-bar phrase. But yeah, I mean, you could, because those guys were playing super rhythmically, like, you know, almost like popcorn machine, like bouncing rhythms off each other. And so I could kind of like develop lines with it. And if I found something cool, I was like, oh, cool. So let me play it this way and then shorten the note or lengthen the note, you know, like all within the phrase. So, so you could do it while you're getting paid. It's kind of interesting. You know, I know it sounds funny, but it's true. And so like, yeah, I kind of learned by just doing it a lot like that. And then, you know, during COVID, we all had time to kind of take a look at our own stuff. And like I was teaching a lot. So like then I was just like, oh man, you know, like one thing that I think that gets ignored a lot is note length. So, which I think is everything. And you've said it before, you know, you guys, you and Scott and everybody say that quite often. And I think it's kind of almost the most important thing.
It's huge, right? Yeah. Like where you cut a note off.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks about attack, right? And attack is one thing, but where you end a note is hugely important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, okay. That's really good. And that line is wild. We play it one more time. We play it.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, I don't know. I think that's the right change. It's D to F or something like that. But yeah, that's basically it.
I mean, it's the combo of everything. It's like that sound, the note length, articulation, the snap on the D string. Also, you know that bass really well. You can tell, like how you're playing it. You know that D string is going to react that way. Not all basses do that. You know,
It's funny. Like it's kind of the exclusive club to like Fender and Fender, you know, copies.
Right.
Because there's a lot of like, you know, like the specialty basses, you know, the other brands like don't do that. And I miss that when I play like a, you know, like a specialty 5-string or whatever like that, you know, like it's just that Fender snap, no matter what it's on every bass. It's amazing, you know?
Yeah, it is amazing. And I think you use this bass. You were telling me too that you used this 68 on the Bowie record too, Black Star. Is that right?
Yeah, mostly. I think there's a couple tunes I used the Moulin. And I had a 77 Fender P back in the day. So like those were on 2 tracks, but the rest of it was this bass. Yeah.
Well, there is this great video of you doing essentially like playing a bass solo before Lazarus,
right,
with Donnie McCaslin. And we got to watch it. It's so awesome.
I don't know if I've seen this.
Sharon's going to pull it up. Sound. Are you making the loop here too, Tim?
Yeah, that's the Tensor by Red Panda Lab.
Yes.
And a little reverb. That's it.
Moulin P bass.
It must be, yeah.
And then what's the pedal that's giving you that swell in there then?
What do you mean, the drone?
Well, there was like you were stepping on something and it was kind of like...
Oh, yeah. That's the Meteor by Caroline Guitars. So if you step, there's one of those things that has the you know, like the exponential growth feedback thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And even though we can't see the front of you, you're playing with a pick.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. When is this from? Huh. It's pretty cool. I don't remember this. I haven't made any huge clams, so that's a good thing.
Dude, you sound amazing. The bass is so like big and present in the space, so stringy.
Yeah, that's the Mulan. Oh. That bass is incredible.
And then Donnie notices something.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know why I was pitched. I have no idea why I was down a half step.
And Nate and Donnie like talk about it. So the first time I watched this, I was like, oh, what are they talking about?
I think Nate knew. Nate's probably got perfect pitch, so Nate knew I was down a half step. And I don't know why I was, but I was. Funny.
And then Donnie asks you right here. Yeah. He's like, so what did he say? Do you remember?
Are you in tune?
And then
oh my
just live, dude, each string.
Showbiz. I mean, really, like, what's the harm?
I know.
It's actually more entertaining than a tune live.
It's so true. Myself. It's so much better than if you would have stepped on a tuner, shut it up, and been embarrassed about it.
But, it's one of those songs, like, I feel like, like Lazarus in any other key would sound horrible. So, like, I think it was the right call to tune up.
Oh, it was so cool. And I mean, I want to talk about Lazarus and I want to talk about Bowie, but just seeing you encounter that scenario where, on a fretted instrument, you could be a half step one way or the other. And, if you don't have perfect pitch, I certainly don't. If I'm playing something, I'm not going to necessarily know. Like if I had tuned down to E flat standard for some reason, I'm not going to know that I'm out. And you didn't know. And then they wondered. And you were like, oh, cool. And you just started to tune it up. And I loved that. And I wondered, like, you seem to be the kind of person and player that you don't get embarrassed easily. Is that true?
I mean, I'll get embarrassed in the studio, but live, I mean, honestly, because I do so much improvising and just generally, except for pop gigs, I mean, I get embarrassed when I screw up on a pop gig. But most of what I'm doing is creative anyway. So it's just like, I think it adds, like, instead of Who's the serious jazz, it's like, yes. I think it's cool to have some humanity in it. You know what I mean? Like, so fine. He's a half step down. Let's let him tune up. I think that might've been an encore. That might've been what it was. And maybe the last song of the set I tuned down, but yeah, I had no idea that I was down a half step until it was too late. I think Nate or Donnie was like, you're down a half step. I'm like, shit, like, right.
It's
but we're playing in front of 500 people. Like, they're not going to die if I tune up live. You know what I mean?
No.
So whatever.
And in fact, those are the things though that like people remember the most, those things of like making the bug a feature. And that's what you did in that moment. You tuned up, you didn't get embarrassed. You didn't, oh my God, it didn't like tank it made it better in a way. And I think that's the sign of like an amazing improviser, an amazing artist is like, you take the thing that is the mistake, right? I screwed up, and you turn it into something amazing.
I try, yeah. I mean, it's not always possible, but yeah.
You mentioned doing all this improvising, right? And can you take us through a little bit of the thing that you're doing at the top of that?
The free chromatic stuff is like, that's Jeff Babco, my friend Jeff Babco, a great keyboard player from LA. He calls it bass occurred to me. and basically what it is like, we all listen to those Weather Report Jocko Pastorius bass solos. And like, but the thing is I was too lazy to really transcribe them. So like I used the rhythmic information and I just put free notes under it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of Jocko-y, it's very Jocko influence, like shreddy, but it's totally uninformed. It's like totally just winging chromatics. It's like kind of bebop-ish, but it's not. It's just faking it, but it sounds cool, and I kind of like it.
It's so Tim Lefebvre too. Like it's when I hear that, I'm like, ooh, I associate that thing with you. It's just such a fascinating thing about your playing. But I would love to actually come back to Bowie and just talk about Lazarus for a minute. And Sharon, let's bring up that clip of when the band kind of locks into this thing. And if you'd show us this bass line, it's so cool to me. But we'll check this out once like you've kind of tuned up, you've brought the bass up a half step, but then you kind of continue to tune a little bit, which is so great. But yeah, let's hear this. Still using that reverb pedal to make those tails long.
No, I think that's the tensor. I don't know why it's
the tensor.
Yeah. That's still sharp, I think.
Are you talking to Nate about like, I didn't even know I was a half step down?
100%.
Yeah. And then there we go, tuning it up.
Still sharp. Wow. At least I know it. I just hit that chord to find out how out of tune I was.
This line, I mean, can we talk about this thing?
Yeah, it's a Tony Visconti line from a demo.
Yeah.
So I just kind of copped it, and then as the song went along, on the record, we just kind of like expanded it. Did just kind of taking pieces of in essence, it's So this is the first half.
Oh yeah.
And then. Now that's the straight demo line. That's Tony Visconti. It's Tony Visconti, man. Yeah, so then he played it at us and then kind of, because he let the band be the band, me, Mark, and Jason and Donnie, like it just kind of took on its own thing. And in fact, the intro was something I was playing at the end of one of the takes and he's like, hey, do that at the beginning.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I should really technically have writing credit. No, I'm kidding. No, but
absolutely.
no way. It's just decoration. But he heard me playing and he was like, yeah, do that at the beginning too. So
who heard you, David?
David, yeah, because we did multiple takes just trying to figure it out, and we didn't have an intro or an outro because the demo just started 3, 4, just like downbeat, and here we are in an intro. But then, because he let us get away with murder in the studio, basically, based off his demos, he just was like, yeah, let's put that at the beginning, and then do it at the end again too. I think I originally did it at the end. He goes, can you do that at the beginning? So
wow,
there it was.
And it's that high line that you're playing. Will you play that for us?
Right. That's basically the vibe. Yeah, and it's kind of a Fink. I'm a big fan of Fink, the singer-songwriter from he's Berlin. He's British, but he's from Berlin. So like it's kind of a lift off this song called "Fear Is Like Fire" of Perfect Darkness, which is one of my favorite records ever. This guy Guy Whitaker played a line like that. So it just kind of got into my DNA, and it just came out during Lazarus.
I've seen you play that to all upstrokes on a pick, and then just now you were playing it all downs. Do you think about that stuff? I've seen you play a lot with like upstrokes with the pick.
I'm sort of leaning. I think like to me, I'm getting a better sound downstroking.
Yeah.
Because like like the articulation is different if you rotate.
Totally.
Right.
Yep.
That sounds more 80s than like proper punk to me.
Yeah, right.
Everything I do is sound derived. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what my right hand looks like. Every time I see pictures of my right hand, I'm just like, well, that doesn't look like anybody else's. Just because it's all, because there's guys who hang it over like this and play perfect, and I was just like, that's just not me. It's not something I ever cared about. I mean, I just was like, I would work on my right hand. Like I played along with a lot of records without amps, and also I rehearsed with Krantz a lot without amps. So like I was forced to get a bigger sound acoustically.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Just electric bass, not plugged into anything.
Yep.
Crazy.
I know. But it's,
that sounds like a nightmare, but probably good for you.
Yeah, it was good. It's great for right hand development. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can't advocate enough for it. I used to play along with like Mother's Milk by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know.
Yes.
You know, like, but without an amp, it's just
Right.
like kind of, you know, just like playing along with that record. That was so much fun.
Man, my first bass teacher was like, here's the deal. For the first month, you may not have an amp. And I was like, oh. And he was like, what you have to do is you have to put your face against the instrument and feel and hear the vibration through the wood. And so it was just me, just poor me, man, practicing like this.
That's for a month.
But it was
that's
actually kind of cool.
I mean, yeah, but a month seems like punishment.
And let me ask you about the pick too, because you play a lot with the pick,
Right.
but not always. Did the pick come later for you? Was it something you started out doing? Did you ever have a period where you thought it was dumb, or is it always been a part of what you liked?
No, I played on the Ocean's 12 soundtrack, and that was like 2004. And so David Holmes had temped all this music to the soundtrack that would, you know, and it ended up becoming like super influential to me. And a lot of it was like, you know, Serge Gainsbourg and like movie soundtracks from the 60s. And those guys, you know, most of them were converted guitar players, so they all played with a pick, you know. That's actually Jason Faulkner on the soundtrack, by the way. But
cool.
It's like that Beck, the Justin Miller Johnson thing. Like, you know, those guys are modern extensions of it, which I love that stuff so much. So like, you know, as soon as I heard all this music, like, and then David Holmes had a ton more music that he gave to me that was all in the same wheelhouse as Ocean's 12. And then I just got hooked. So like, you know, and then, you know, the other thing was like, you know, still doing a lot of improv gigs. And I was just like, wait, nobody's out there playing with a pick either. Like nobody's going for like a Serge Gainsbourg. I mean, you can play out, of course, but like to use a pick, it's like, wow, okay. Like you're really crossing some borders there, which is kind of fun. You know, because it doesn't have to be a note shredfest jazzy jazz. It could be like, you know.
No.
You know, it could be whatever it's going to be, but like with a pick, it's just like, oh, cool, we're in a different zone now.
Absolutely. Did you ever get into Steve Swallow? I mean, in terms of, you know,
no, I actually
jazz
didn't.
player with a pick.
No, I was kind of like, you know, I was kind of more conventional. You know, let's go with Charlie Hayden. You know, like when I listen to jazz, I know I've heard some records that he's amazing, like especially the John Scofield records, but. Yeah. And he's also super lyrical and all that stuff. But, you know, like I was just a Jocko guy. So like it never, you know.
So the pick thing came more from maybe like a rock zone or more
absolutely,
from like a pop
100%.
music.
Yeah, pop music and like, you know, definitely from rock and, you know, because like I tend to think, like I've done my homework on jazz, but like, you know, I always liked rock better. Because that's what you know, you put on the radio when you're a kid. It's like, you know, AC/DC and like Zeppelin. And it's like, you know, and I love jazz. I mean, I have a deep love for like the Miles Davis, you know, Herbie, Ron, and Tony quintet, you know, like that's never, and Wayne Shorter, it's never going to change. But, you know, really my heart lies in like rock and roll. And, you know, I don't know if these guys were playing with a pick or not, but, you know, it's just like that's kind of like where my head was and kind of always is. So
that sound has been with you forever since you were a kid.
Yeah, it's been on the radio, right? So,
of course. Yeah. I want to pull up, I want Sharon to pull up this Tedeschi Trucks tiny desk. And fun. Just, there is a moment where you're supporting a sax solo. And I just wanted to ask you about your sort of idea for comping or how you build energy in an improvised setting. Right. So let's pull this up.
Cool. Kebby's in my band. We have a band called Whose Hat Is This? With the two drummers and Kebby.
Oh, I saw that on your site. Okay, cool.
Yeah. We just have a new record.
He's in this band with you.
Yeah, he's the main soloist guy.
Oh, very cool.
He's amazing, this guy.
He's a monster.
Yeah.
Just tearing. And then you come up. This thing that you're playing up high, it's like you started, you know, as the energy was lifting for this solo, you started to come up and play this figure up high. And it just sort of grabbed me. Is that something When you're supporting a solo, do you have any kind of things you think about? Are you just going with the energy of the moment? Do you remember this thing you played up high?
I mean, yeah, it's all just coming from the toolbox. I don't think about it too much. Like it's all spur of the moment. Like that, I suppose, you know, I guarantee you was influenced by Paul Jackson Jr., I'm sure, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because he would always play those high things and then play down low. So, you know, like sometimes in a funk and like a vintage sounding context, that stuff's kind of cool. Like to just be able to draw from that. Because it's not just like Jamerson, you know, like, which, you know, I love Jamerson. But sometimes, you know, I feel like you need to get out of that wheelhouse sometimes. So like sometimes it's Paul.
How do you get out of that wheelhouse? Like, so you mentioned Paul Jackson Jr. Like, what do you mean specifically? Can you give me an example on the bass?
So like, you know, like,
yes.
You know,
where you're holding something down on the bottom.
Yep.
Coming up, playing like a.
And this
motif.
is like, yeah, who's the guy on Flying the Family Stone Fresh? What's his name? Rusty Allen, right? Like that's a great lick
Good
too.
pull.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
oh, it's a straight up guitar lick, really.
Whew. Yes.
But it sounds deadly on bass, you know. Yeah, the Fresh has some great funk bass stuff on it too. But yeah, that kind of stuff. If you're letting an open string ring, it's like cool to have. That's actually, you know, like speaking of R.I.P. David Sanborn, but like there's a bass solo on Straight to the Heart from Marcus on that's really insane. And so like that's, but I think he stole it from Willie Weeks, in fact. Hold on, let me find the record. So this is where he steals the Willie Weeks thing. He's like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, right? Yeah.
Tim Lefebvre, you're such a badass. Phone in one hand, tapping the solo with the other, dude. Let's just not not overlook that.
But it's one of those things where it's just from when I was a kid. It's just like I got obsessed with that solo. But you know, so then, you know, so I've been playing that shit for years because of that.
It's a device that you can use when energy is building, right?
Yeah,
in a tune,
yeah.
or like, right?
Right.
And even it never gets cluttery. Like, man, there was just that thing that happening at the end of that sax solo, and everybody's going in, you're playing this thing up high. And I love how you're responding to the energy instead of like you never feel like you're trying to stay away. And I like that about your playing. You're like in.
I can't help it. I mean, it's 100% instinct, and it's just like, you know, one of the things I was teaching over COVID when I was doing some private lessons with kids, is like, you know, my method is like, you know, you lay it down and then provoke, lay it down, provoke. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
Like, so it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, you know, I think about it conceptually, but I just do it. You know what I mean? Like, stay out of the way, play the line, and then devastate them with something. You know what I mean? And it's not, and I don't mean like step out and show off. I mean, just kind of like, let's give this thing a left-hand turn for a second. You know what I mean?
Oh, wait, say the phrase again. What is it? And then provoke?
Like,
lay it down.
Lay it down, then provoke. Then,
yeah.
You know, I think
3 in 1.
It's kind of, yeah, exactly. Well, you know, whatever. And always in the phrase and always, you know.
Sure.
But Daryl Jones would do that with Sting, like, you know, but he would do it on downbeats, which I thought was the coolest. I'm kind of in a bad habit of like doing weird shit on downbeats because of Daryl Jones, like back in the day. But, you know, I can't help it. And sometimes it lands and it's incredible, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, give me an example. Lay it down, provoke. What does that mean for you?
So
it's
like,
a funk groove or whatever.
I could actually play a Sting line where he does that.
Amazing. Even better.
You know the opening of Bring on the Night?
It's not in my bones.
It's a movie. It's the Sting movie where they're rehearsing at his house, but they're playing Bring on the Night. So, and then he does this lick, and then we have to slow it. Like,
oh
yeah, that Daryl does that. Like, it's the slick. I was just like, you know, like that movie really influenced me, by the way. Like
wow.
On so many levels with octave pedal. Like Daryl's used to the octave pedal, but like that lick, I was just like, man. Like that's what I mean. Like that's the provocation. You know what I mean? Instead of just going.
Yes, it is.
You know what I mean? So yeah, surprise. And then Daryl would also like do stuff in the downbeat, but I can't. You know, let me give an example. It's for. Yeah. You know, like that kind of stuff.
Oh, right.
Right.
Like subverting your expectation.
You're right. You know, like just stuff like that. You know, surprise on the downbeat instead of like a fill into the next phrase. You know what I'm saying?
Man, I have a dear friend who's singer-songwriter, Jeremy Messersmith, who talks about every song needs a lion, tigers, and bears, oh my moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like, you know, you need a left turn. You need an oh my. You know, everything you're writing needs to have something where you're like, oh, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, or that's a shocker.
I like that. I like that thinking. That's great.
Yeah, I like it too.
Yeah.
I love it in bass playing too. I think sometimes for me, I feel a little more beholden to the part, beholden to laying it down. I am not doing enough provocation. I'm laying it down more, you know.
But you're doing something right. I mean, that's provocation. That's not for every, you know, I'm not advising people to do it because sometimes it just sounds out of hand. You know what I mean? Like there are examples of that. Like I don't want to confuse it with overplaying. I just think it's like, I want to keep it interesting without sounding like I'm, and of course in the studio, I don't do any of that. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, it's only really a live tool. I mean, you can do a little in the studio, but you don't want to get carried away with it, especially if you're playing a song or something like that.
Yeah.
You might have heard of songs before, you
ever hear of songs?
No, but like think about it. Paul McCartney did that shit all the time.
It's true.
He did it all the time. Like the bass was like a melodic instrument in that stuff, and it was just like, whoa, So I'm not saying I'm always thinking about Paul McCartney, but like that dude did it a lot.
Yeah,
the provocation.
He sure
thing.
did.
Yeah.
And came from like a no fear zone where he's playing with his friends. Yeah. Right. And they're like messing around, the Apple doc. Like, I watched all of that. They are absolutely free and absolutely messing around like kids. In fact, it was stressing me out. Like, guys, there's a rooftop show coming up. You got to like, I felt more like with management. I was like, this is stressful. And they were like just having fun together. And that was really actually pretty inspiring to see.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting. Like when I read something, I don't know what it was, but there's a thing about when McCartney started hearing James Jamerson, because it was the same era.
Yes.
And that's when his playing just went,
of course.
because he started incorporating that stuff, and he just became an absolute monster.
A terror on the bass. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Tim, do you have, we're talking about all of this bravery. You've talked about you don't care what people think. You've given us examples of like playing out, but also supporting. You've played with some of the best artists ever. But I wonder, was there a time in your career, like earlier on, or wherever along the way, where you really felt like you got your ass kicked, or really felt like you learned a lesson the hard way? Is there any of that stands out to you that you?
Yeah, there was. Because I also play upright. There was a gig in New York. I was playing with Dave Kokoski and really good jazz guys. And we were playing at I think it was like Smalls or something. And I was just getting smoked. I couldn't even play. I was just like, I'm going to lay out because you guys were just. And I think we were playing standards. I just got my ass so kicked. It was like unreal.
Wow.
Dave Kokoski, yeah. But it's funny. Like I redeemed myself somehow with Dave Kokoski because he came to the 55 bar to see Krantz like years later. It's like, yeah, man. But no, it was bad. It was like, that's about the worst I've ever done. And I've also failed in the studio a few times,
And what does that look like for you? Like, I mean, how do you fail in the studio? What do you mean?
But I was, this is like one of my beginning years in New York, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when I just didn't really know what I was doing. And also like people didn't have patience. So back then this guy, Ollie Theodore, was producing these bands that were kind of signed. And so he'd try to hire me to come in, but it was like R&B, and I didn't know R&B back then because I was playing with Krantz. And so that genre was to be avoided on that gig. So,
right.
I don't know. So I got my ass handed to me a few times,
Yeah.
I've been, I got lectured by some people in New York, about like not giving it away that you made a mistake or something like that. Yeah. I mean, like it happens.
What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by not giving it away?
Like, I just, like if you make a huge mistake, it's like, don't like, like, that's what the guy was telling me. Not that
sure.
Ever. Yeah. Because, I did a tour with Bryan Adams and I dropped it. I think it was a Straight to the Heart or no, one of the ballads, and I just completely played the wrong chord.
Yes.
And in front of like 5,000 people, and Brian's like, he starts turning around like this, and he kind of look at me, and then I maybe it was an inside of the band joke, but nobody would look at me for like 3 minutes. And I was like, fuck, I'm fired, I'm so fired, and they were just fucking with me because everybody, nobody was perfect on that gig, nobody's really ever perfect on a pop gig.
Of course,
they try, they shoot for it, but it's like nah. But yeah, it was really funny. I was just like. But, I was just like, playing. Everything I do, I think it was like everything I do it for you.
Robin Hood soundtrack, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know how I did it, but I just dropped a really wrong root on the verse. And he was like, it was really rough. But I wasn't like cowering. I was just, but, I did it in New York. I'd be like, I'd screw up and go, like everybody would be more visual about it in New York.
Right,
so.
Sure. Yeah. And someone was like, don't show it. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if I needed that advice or not. It's like, hey, man, it happened, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
Over the years, have you gotten better at like letting that stuff go kind of quickly, or does it still feel painful? Like if you screw up on a pop gig, for me anyway, when that happens, it just, the only thing that solves it is just time. It just very slowly and painfully fades over like a long period of time. But have you corrected that more?
No, it's awful every time. Absolutely awful.
Yes.
I mean, I did that tour with Tiziano Ferro last summer, and I did so many embarrassing things. Like sometimes I unplug myself. It's in front of like 60,000 people, and you make a mistake, and it's like the band leader would like he'd say bravo Tim, and in the mic while we were playing. It's because after I fucked up.
Bravo Tim.
Luca Scarpa. Bravo, bravissimo. He'd say on the mic.
Dude, it was
great. Yeah, so he caught all the shit I was fucking up, and it was hilarious.
That's amazing. All right, well then, how about this? You're you now, looking back at Tim, maybe late teens, early 20s. What's the advice that you would give your younger self from now?
Phew, I don't know. Make better choices sometimes, occasionally.
What do you mean by that?
Just like, I did some stuff that like career-wise, I guess it's part of like the whole thing of growing up. But like there are people who are not predatory, but like, taking of it, like not paying you much so they can get their, like, it's like what happens now. Like people hire young kids because they're cheaper and, so like I was one of those kids, and I was just like, I suppose there was a lot of chances for me to be on pop gigs, and I kept choosing the weird art stuff, like with Jojo Mayer or something like that. And like I remember Mike Visaglia asked me to sub on Suzanne Vega a couple of times. Like this is early 2000s when somebody asked me to sub on 98 Degrees in early 2000s. And, like I just wasn't, I don't think I was cut out for a pop gig at that point anyway. But, I wish I had been. And then, I just, some of it's just business stuff. It's just like, oh man, what did I do? Like just, but other than that, I have no regrets about like how my playing has evolved or whatever. I mean, I think it probably should have got better at upright bass because I know I get shredded by so many guys, but it's functional, so I'm happy enough with it. But yeah, I know, because the upright's a whole other animal. So it's
it's a whole other animal.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's like to play it well. Takes more work than I put into it. So
of course, but like you feel like you wish you would have had more business sense, more someone in your corner talking to you about that? Like what?
I was scared to bum somebody out so much that like, I didn't have the, like I didn't want to say to somebody, well, listen, I got to cancel this tour or cancel these gigs because I have to go out with Suzanne Vega or something, like something like that. You know what I mean? I was so afraid of that battle because like I had some bad experiences with it that I just kind of avoided it. And doing so probably left some opportunities on the table that would have helped, but it's fine. It's all water under the bridge, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting. Thanks for being willing to talk about it because it's so interesting. Like people see you as such an artist. Like you are a creative force for art on the bass guitar and in music in general. And it's just so interesting to hear you talk about like, oh, you know, you could have had this different trajectory of playing pop gigs. I mean, selfishly, I am so happy that you're doing what you're doing now, because I think it's like, it gives bass players permission to maybe be a little more creative, maybe step out a little bit more, maybe provoke, like you said, a little bit more. I for one, am happy that you're not currently the bass player of 98 Degrees.
I mean, listen, you know, like I'm perfectly willing to do that stuff, and I can do it. It's just, you know, it has to be the right situation at the right time and
right.
the right money.
Yes, of course.
But you know, it's like, it all feels good to me. So it's not like, you know, I mean, I'd love to go out with like the Wood Brothers or, you know, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, any of that stuff, like Nora Jones, or, because I can do it, and I can, you know, I think people are a little afraid because they think I'm some kind of freak show, but it's like, at this point, like I used to really worry about that, but I'm like, nothing you can't change people's minds. So it's like, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I hope, I'm not out there trying to be an inspiration. I'm just doing what I do. You know what I mean? Like, it's really not conscious. Like, I think if it was conscious, it would be kind of weird. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, check me out. Because it'd be more check me out than what it is, which is just kind of, I like to just fold myself into a band and make it work, you know? So.
Yep. Well, we love you for that. So
thank you.
Thanks,
very nice.
Thanks for being you. Where can we go online to support you the best? Like, what's the best place to go to check out all your current projects, your music, what's happening with you?
Well, there's, you know, my Instagram obviously is where I'm the most active. I have a new record called Whose Hat Is This with my band, from all the guys from Tedeschi Trucks, and Kokai, the guy from DC, MC from DC, genius. So that's out. That's on my website, timlefebvremusic.com. But
awesome.
I'm not a big blogger, and you know, I have a Patreon thing, but it's all archives. So, but it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff on there. There's like a lot of lessons and videos and gear stuff, and yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being willing to do this today, being vulnerable, showing us all these like incredible lines and sounds. You're the best, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Back at you, sir.
All right. We'll catch you soon. Take care. Thanks, Tim.
Peace. Thank you.